So Ana Lebrón is a site reliability engineer manager at Innova International. She's passionate about DevOps, Agile, and diversity, and takes any opportunity she can to come back to her home country in Spain. So she's originally from Seville. And if I think you're from Seville, you said, right?
I'm from Córdoba.
Córdoba, okay. Beautiful place, very good salmorejo. If you've never tried it, you gotta come and do it. And outside of work, Ana loves playing volleyball and dancing and spending time with her family. So Ana, if you're ready, I'm going to go ahead and let you start us off.
Sure, let me share my screen. Here we go. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, so thank you for the introduction, Alexandra. So my name is Ana Lebrón. I'm connecting from Chicago today. And I want to thank everybody who is attending the sessions today. We have had such awesome speakers so far. I really enjoyed the talks from Lucas and Felix. And I'm so glad Felix touched on ownership because it's such an important theme and topic related to what I'm going to be talking about. I hope everyone is staying healthy and safe in their own homes and countries, and you are ready to learn about DevOps. So let me first talk about why I'm so passionate about DevOps. And the reason is because of how I landed in the position that I am today. I currently manage a team of approximately 10 site reliability engineers at Innova International, but I do not come from a site reliability engineering background. I actually come from a project management role, and I landed in technology operations a little bit by chance. So when I joined technology operations 4 years ago at my current company, we were handling 50 manual deployments per week. We were also servicing approximately 50 services across the company. And the site reliability engineering team was responding to more than 300 incidents per week, right? Like the site reliability engineering team, they were the frontline support for every incident we had in the organization. So as you can imagine, the life of the team, it looks pretty much like something like this, right? Every day. And the company was growing really fast. Technology was expanding very quickly. So when I joined the team, I realized it's gonna be really hard to really scale up our operations at the rhythm we are growing our business. So around the same time, we had a new director joining our team, and he started talking about DevOps. And I started learning about it, and he tried to transform our organization into a DevOps organization, and he failed. And the reason because he failed is it's because he tried to implement a transformation versus an evolution. And what I learned and what I realized from that moment in time is that, number one, we need to do this DevOps thing he was talking about, right? If we really want a success. And the second one is that the only way to truly implement that is through a change in culture. There is no other way. So today, we have doubled the number of deployments that we do on a weekly basis, and they are self-deployments, like engineers deploy their own change. We serve triple the number of microservices, and the site reliability engineering team handled less than 200 incidents per week. So even if we have grown and increased our technology and we have grown as a business, we are handling less incidents. So I'm not sure we can consider ourselves a mature DevOps company, but definitely we are moving in the right direction. So this is what I'm going to cover today through this talk. First, the status quo when we first started this DevOps journey. The second one is what is DevOps, and then my thought process on how we should be deploying a DevOps culture. So this is how a lot of organizations are at the moment when they start thinking about moving into DevOps, right? Like they are growing the same that we were like a few years ago. They are growing very, very fast. They are growing from like a small into a big company. They are accumulating a lot of tech debt that they need to respond to, but they're also delivering a lot of unreliable services. They need to deliver services, but they are not reliable, which also impact how much tech debt they have to handle. So let me upfront break some misconceptions that a lot of teams have about like what DevOps is, right? Like a lot of teams think that just combining development and operations is DevOps, and that is not. By just putting developers in charge of their own code doesn't mean you're really applying your DevOps principle or you're taking benefits of DevOps. Well, what about removing ops? Is that DevOps? It's not. Like ops is still like a very important role within every organization, and actually like the ops team take advantage a lot of like the principles of DevOps. They streamline a lot of their tasks, keeping an eye on business values, and they automate a lot of the work that they do. We need to remember that DevOps is to align the business goals from software and operations, and this is very important because traditionally it hasn't been that way. What about like an out-of-the-shelf tool that we can just like buy out in the industry? That is also not DevOps, right? Like using a set of like well-integrated tools is very important, and definitely it's gonna help us to have like a joint pipeline. By just focusing on the tools doesn't mean you're gonna take advantage of DevOps. The core of DevOps is like collaboration, so you need to pick the tool that is really gonna fit that purposes and it's gonna add efficiency to your processes. It's very easy to use the wrong set of tools, the right set of tools for the wrong purposes. What about a new team? Like some companies, you have like a DevOps engineer, DevOps team, then it means we're DevOps. It's also not. A lot of organizations, they create a DevOps teams that they use to like plan and coach and advocate for DevOps principle, and that's okay. But ultimately, this should be, and this is the whole point of my presentation, it should be embedded in the culture. So by just having a team running this principle is not really gonna work. What about moving to the cloud? The cloud have like endless and a lot of power to manage our IT infrastructure. That's also not DevOps. So this is the definition that I like the most about DevOps, and it's because it's focusing on the end goal. And DevOps is a set of practices that automate the process between development and IT teams so they can build, test, and deploy software faster and more reliable. So I would love to hear from the audience if any of you are familiarized with some of these DevOps principles, right? I'm gonna go through them very quickly right now, but anything you're familiar with related to DevOps, I would love to hear about it. But these are like some of the most important ones, right? Like focus on customer needs. Your customer is first. Another one, end-to-end responsibility. So this is like, it's very related with what Felix was talking about related to ownership, right? Like you built it, you own it. The next one is continuous improvement, like continuous learning. Foster collaboration, removing all the silos, also very related with like ownership. And automate everything or almost everything. But the most important thing for me about DevOps is that it challenges the status quo, right? Like by adopting this type of methodology, you are able to like analyze what really add value to your organization and adapt from it. And everything that is left is just considered waste. And also like it's a culture shift, which is what I was talking before. Like it is something, this is a culture that it should spread across the entire organization, and it's gonna drastically change the way we work and engage together, and we're gonna become more collaborative and responsive to change. So let me go very quickly about like the DevOps history and how this term became a thing in the industry. So in 2003, Ben Traynor, who today is the Vice President of Engineering at Google, was hired at the time to hire a group of engineers that will be running production environment. And he called them site reliability engineers. So I'm not gonna touch base how site reliability engineers and DevOps are related, but I will in my talk in October. But they are definitely very related to each other. But when DevOps was really started was in 2009, when two employees at Flickr, they were like John Auspan and Paul Hammond. They presented the 10 plus deploys per day, dev and ops cooperation. And this is a very famous talk in the industry, and they add a very dramatic flair to it, in which like they role plays the continuous interplay between representatives in operations and representatives in ops and development during a typical software deployment, together with all the blame and finger pointing that comes with it, right? Like, is your code the one who broke the production, or is your infrastructure the one who broke the production? And and during that presentation, they made the case that the only way to move forward is the only rational way to move forward is to make development and operations to be seamless, transparent, and fully integrated. And a lot of the call out they did to the industry during that presentation is that what we know as DevOps today. Very shortly after that, the first DevOps Day was started in Belgium. It was Patrick Devois, the one who started it. And today is a very famous gathering of devs and ops across the globe. There is more than 30 every year. So definitely what's signaling like how important this concept was becoming. And also in 2012, we saw like some DevOps tools coming into the industry. And also in 2013, the Phoenix Project, this is a very famous book in the industry as well, in which like it's a fictional novel, but they introduced like new ways of like run IT and operations and application development, introducing the DevOps concepts along the way. And from there, really, it has been like a very rapid adoption of DevOps. We can see from this graph that it has really, and this is like based on like a Google search popularity based on a keyword. So if you search for Google, you can see 100 is the peak of popularity. So you can see the DevOps term is really a very, very popular term in the industry, and it's being adopted very quick. But if it is such a great methodology, has such a like great principles, why it is so challenging, right? Like why it is. And these are like my top 5 challenge of implementing like a DevOps culture. The first one is overcoming the dev versus the ops mentality. There is this old cliche of like developers just tossing code over an imaginary wall and expecting operations to run it in production. Developers will be just focused on creating new features, and operations focus on keeping 100% stability. And that is a very difficult challenge to overcome. The second one is moving from legacy infrastructure to microservices. Legacy infrastructure, they are problematic because they are hard to support, they provide stability problems, and it really leaves you behind in competitive advantage. But moving into microservices, it has their own set of challenge as well, right? You need moving into microservices means you need to have a very good foundation of automation, continuous delivery, and configuration management that is going to allow you to handle the workload of operations that microservices are going to generate. Also, too much focus on tools is problematic because you're going to have to, and it's to the point that I was mentioning before, related to like an out-of-the-shelf tool, is that you're going to have to train your team. You're going to have to like consider security requirements, and you're going to have to make sure that your tool is well integrated. So again, too much focus on the tools, it could be a challenge for a lot of organizations. The number 4, and for me, this is the most important one, is the resistance to change. Moving into like a new process, new methodology, new ways of operations, it just scary, right? Like, and people, you're gonna find a lot of resistance from your teams to change the way they operate, and change is just being perceived negatively by the person who is getting this advice. So that's something that you would have to handle as well. And then the dev and ops, because they have been so far away in terms of business goal, they have their own set of standards and metrics. And that can also like clash at some time and make it difficult to overcome. So what I'm gonna go through today is what, from my experience, have been one of the most important aspects for us at Innova to deploy a DevOps culture. The first thing is learn from the past to influence the future. The first time I joined the team, I spent the first 6 months not changing anything and just learning why we were doing manual deployments, why we were accumulating so much tech debt. There is no way you're going to really influence a team or you're going to influence an organization if you don't know why they are at the point that they are in that specific moment. So in our case, for example, we work in the financial industry, and regulation changed very quickly across all the states within the United States. So we needed to react really quick, and we need to adapt our products really quick to those regulations. We also have very strict compliance requirements because of being in the financial industry. So things that they were impacting the way we were operating for so many years. So you need to learn the past to really influence how you want your team to evolve. Understand your business. A lot of people ask me, what's the more important question about DevOps? And this is for me the most important question. Why is this business? Why do we exist as an organization, and how we are providing value? Outlining the benefits of TechOps is not enough, right? That's not gonna sell your transformation or your evolution. You need to ultimately identify how this is going to contribute your bottom line. Having data-driven conversations. So for every meeting I was going to, data was the first thing in the agenda. You need to address this evolution on a proof-based models and bring in those DevOps initiatives that they provide measurable goals. And they could be around like release cycle time or cost efficiency, but ultimately you will also need to translate that into business value and competitive advantage. And those last two are more difficult, but ultimately this evolution into DevOps will get you that data. You will see that change. The next one is bottom-up implementation. So having leadership support is very important to implement DevOps, but you need to implement it from the bottom. And this is the concept of fake it until you make it, right? Like you want to make sure that the teams that they're skeptical to change, they just start doing things. And still today, we don't call ourselves like a DevOps teams, a DevOps organization. Like we didn't even call it DevOps. We just get teams to start doing what we want them to do. So this bottom-up implementation is very important. And then ultimately, your culture will change organically, right? And you need to remember that DevOps is a change in culture, like full stop. You can adopt agile planning, you can create automated testing on continuous delivery, and those are like great start. But DevOps is all about like a shared understanding between development and operations and shared responsibility for the code that you own. So that means increasing transparency, collaboration, and communication across all these different team members, IT, developers, operations, and business. And I get it, like changing a culture is very difficult and is scary. But from my experience, there is two key ingredients that they are very important on this cultural transformation. One of them is clarity around expectations. The other one is to ensure that there is an environment of psychological safety. Without that, the teams are going to be thrashing around, like making mistakes, and the worst of it is that they're not going to learn from it. So just to end my presentation, I just want to say that very often DevOps initiatives, they failed because they aim straight to the moon instead of considering the baby steps to get there. So start small, identify the low-hanging fruit, and then iterate from that. DevOps is a journey, it's not a destination. There are always gonna be like new ways to implement, like ways to improve, new techniques of collaboration that you can adopt. And getting your entire organization on board is a whole other journey on itself. So I really hope the tips that I gave you today helped you in that journey. And just to end my presentation, I want to thank the team that I work with every day, now remote, obviously, but having such a passionate group of people specializing in observability, incident management, site reliability engineering, it's what really make this journey a success. It was really is evolving our organization. Like, again, we don't call it DevOps, we don't call it like how mature we are. We are just focusing on the value that we are delivering. So, and really lucky and blessed to work with such an awesome group of people. So that is all that I have for you today. And I would love to hear any question from the audience.
I've got one. So kind of we've got our DevOps, but we call them dat plat because they're data side for us. Do you ever kind of feel the need to potentially have a look at the likes of test ops? Someone who is focused on the testing side of the actual DevOps process, rather than just leaving themselves to kind of carry on their own tests, potentially missing things off.
Like, are you referring, let me repeat your question to make sure that I get it right, referring to like testing tools that we are adapting?
No,
to, like,
not
okay.
testing tools, as in testers, but with an ops, with a almost like a DevOps mentality, but more test.
Mm-hmm. Right, it's what we call really in DevOps, and at least what we call in our organization is like moving things left, right? Like making sure that the tests, they are like fully integrated within the system development life cycle, right? Like instead of having like such a step process, right? Like we are adopting this concept, and these are goals that we set on a yearly basis on continuous moving testing to the left, to make sure that we tackle like the unit test, the integration test, and the spec test, and making sure that those are fully integrated across the entire pipeline. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine. Thank you.
I have a question. Once you've developed some DevOps principles, what feedback have you received so far from like different teams that you have?
So as I mentioned before, when we first started it was very scary. A lot of people were skeptical, people didn't want to jump into it. Today, the way these have translated for us is on like less production incidents, actually, like less production incidents impacting our customers, and also better MTTD, which is like mean time to discovery, which means like because we have like teams handling their own incidents, right? Like, and we have this concept of you build it and you own it, we are able to identify those incidents much faster and therefore resolve them much faster. So the feedback from development has been great so far, right? Like engineers, although they were scary at the beginning, now they truly appreciate that they can see how their code runs in production, how it impacts our customer, right? Like what is like a very impactful change versus like what is just a change that it have low impact in customer. And from the business perspective, it comes together with like what I was talking related to like data-driven conversations, right? Like they're seeing that we can reduce the time of resolving customer impacting issues, and that ultimately is going to impact the bottom line. So product managers and business, they were also like very happy about like how this transformation or how this evolution has really translated into like what we do as a business, how has contributed to the bottom line. And ultimately it's about make us a more resilient and really reliable business, right? And customer care about reliability. So we need to make sure that we resolve any issues and incident we have in production quickly. We need to have the less incidents as possible, and if we have them, we resolve them quickly. And that's the ultimate value that I feel software engineers and product managers, they have realized after going through this evolution.
Okay, and I actually have another question. What advice would you give somebody or an organization going DevOps now, like during the situation that we find ourselves in, where you're not face to face with the team, and you have to do everything virtually, basically?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely like challenging because again, that like removing of the silos and collaboration, it's one of the most important principles within DevOps. But I think it can still happen, right? Like it's what I talked about before about giving the baby steps and focusing on what really bring value to the organization. So, for example, if you don't have like a really reliable and solid deployment pipeline, that's something that your engineering team can fully be focusing on, right? Like if you are funneling your incidents through an individual team, like we were doing back in the days, right? Like you can definitely start like creating that changing culture and having engineers handling their own incidents, growing that sense of like, and again, I think it's very related with what Felix was talking about, like growing that sense of ownership, like have engineers to own the code that they built. So definitely like we use a lot of like phone calls and get together, and something that have proved for us being very successful and that we do a lot even now being remote is like learning from incidents. Like every incident that we have in the organization, like big production incident, is an opportunity for learning, right? We have someone at the company who said like have never taken any advantage. They have always been taking advantage of like production incident, and it's because there are awesome opportunities for learning, and that's something that we do continuously at Innova. We just like get together every week. We talk about every incident that we go through and trying to learn from it to make us better. And that's a very core principle of DevOps that I think definitely we can continue doing while being remote.